Okay, what's up, y'all? So this is a follow-up to my first video that I did yesterday or the day before about Mr. Floyd's death. We watched the video that we had at the time, and I knew that there'd be more video that would come out, and so I didn't want to get too deep based on the one video that was um, provided. There has been a few more videos that have popped up, um, different angles, surveillance video, things like that. So we do have a little bit more. We still don't have the full story, but we do have a little bit more. And we do have, and this is an important part, we do have what is detailed in the complaint that was filed against Officer Chauvin, however you say it. In any case, I am going to be using the WashingtonPost.com article. That is going to be what I am pulling from the details since it lists what the complaint says. There is a video there for you to watch as well. But basically, if you don't know any of the facts, if you've only seen the video on social media and things like that, I'll just briefly go over it so that you understand what it is. The former police officer, Derek Chauvin, he's a 44-year-old male. I believe he's from Florida, but he worked in Minneapolis. He has been arrested and charged with murder and the death of George Floyd. There's also been a manslaughter charge filed. So in my last video, I got a lot of people that had made comments about how this is murder and it's not manslaughter, and how dare you say it's manslaughter and things like that, which I understand. I understand when people of the public want something to be murder because to them it looked like murder. But from a law enforcement perspective, you really can't work like that. You can't work backwards. You can't pick what you want it to be and then work backwards and find that evidence with bias. You have to look at the facts. And so where I'm from, the law enforcement community in Honolulu, we do not have a third-degree murder charge. We have first-degree murder, which is more than one person, or premeditation, like conspiracy. Or we have second-degree murder, which is in you kill somebody. And then after that, we have manslaughter. So our manslaughter in Honolulu is when you didn't intend on killing anyone. There's no intent. But you were reckless, or you did something that caused the death of somebody, committed a crime, and it resulted in the death. So in my last video, you notice that I said that I don't think that what he did was murder. That's what I was speaking to because I wasn't familiar with a third-degree murder charge. But in Minneapolis, they do have a third-degree murder charge. And I'm going to get into all those so that you understand why the charges were what the charges were. He was 19 years in the police department, and it did say that he had 17 complaints during the last 19 years. And a lot of people jumped on that one. A lot of people are saying, how can you have 17 complaints and still be a police officer? Well, from a police officer's perspective, and I know that a lot of police officers will be able to attest to this, especially in Honolulu. There's a saying that you hear a lot as you're coming up in the department. And it's that if you haven't gotten a complaint, you're not doing your job. And that's mostly because it's just a numbers game. There are so many people you're going to arrest, and so many of them are going to make complaints. And most of the time, based on my experience, the people making complaints are making complaints that are unfounded, but they're doing it because they want to get back at you. They're upset. And or they think what you did was wrong, but what you did was according to the law. Now, they may not be happy with the law, but it doesn't make it not the law. So I had a complaint made against me once, and it was a man that I caught watching pornography in the play place of a McDonald's, watching my kids play in the McDonald's. He was in the play place section where only kids and families with kids are supposed to be. And he was watching porn on a computer, and he had a webcam on the front of his laptop, and I knew something was off. And long story short, I approached him and saw the porn on the computer, and talked to the manager, and the manager said that he has been there for the last 6 months. He comes every day, and he goes in the play place and hooks up his computer. and they just thought he needed Wi-Fi, but he was watching porn and watching the kids, so there's something wrong with him. There's a couple other things he was doing that was super creepy. In any case, I asked the manager if he wanted to make a complaint, and the manager said it was against their policy to trespass somebody from their premises, that he wasn't allowed to do that. So I took a picture of the guy and I gave the picture to the manager and said, if you want to do something, I'll do the report for you right now. I was off duty. I was an off-duty police officer at the time. And I said, I'll do it for you. He said, no, I'm not allowed to. I have to talk to my manager. I said, well, here's the picture if you want to do it later. Well, then that guy called the police department and sent an email, which I just think it's funny that the email, I still remember the email address. It gets really big at yahoo.com. Or I'm sorry, it gets really big at hotmail.com. And he's obviously some type of pervert. And he made a complaint saying that I called him a commie and that I told him I was going to kill him and all this other stuff, which I didn't. I had my kids with me and my wife. I was upset, but I didn't do any of those things. And he made a complaint. And I got in trouble because I didn't make a report. Even though I offered to make a report, it was a violation of policy. So that was my first complaint. And I remember thinking when I got the complaint, oh, that makes sense. I didn't do anything wrong. But he made a complaint because he's mad at me because I told the manager, and now they know that he comes there to watch porn and watch kids. So I kind of understood where that came from. A lot of people make complaints. I've seen a lot of people make harassment complaints and sexual harassment complaints on police officers, and I was there, and none of that stuff happened. But it's just people that think that they can make that complaint and stain someone's reputation. Now, there are some legitimate complaints. All I'm saying is you cannot go off the 17 complaints and say that made him a bad cop when 16 of them were closed without discipline, but the one resulted in 2 letters of reprimand against him. So I'm in no means defending this guy because he killed that man. All I'm saying is that's why I didn't use his past as evidence that he murdered Mr. Floyd. However, that does have to do with his character. If you can prove any of those things were legitimate, we just don't have those resources, so I really can't use that as evidence from an evidential standpoint. It does say that he kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes. One of the things that people had brought up, because I'd mentioned that I'd put my knee on people's neck before, but it was only for seconds, and it was during scuffles and during resisting and when someone was fighting police officers. You do what you can at that moment. You really do what you can, and it's usually a last resort to do something like that, the head and the neck. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do to gain compliance to make the scene safe. But as soon as you get him in handcuffs, you put him in the car. It's safest. Everybody knows that. All the cops know. You get him in the car, then he's safe. He's safe from himself, and people on the scene are safe and don't have to worry about him. Other officers are safe. The former head of police in New Orleans, in Washington State, said that 17 appears to be higher than average for complaints. I didn't have complaints. I only had the one in my career. It was only 7 years long. But 17 seemed high is what he said for that area. So that's kind of an indicator. And I guess the complaint said that Floyd was arrested on suspicion of forgery. And they were sent down a forgery case. And it looks like from the video that I saw that the officers were called by the complainant, which was the store that the forged money was used at, maybe a check or counterfeit cash or something. And they went inside and talked to the complainant first. He probably ID'd him and said, it's the man sitting out there in that car. So they went out there and they talked to him. The other thing now that I wanted to talk about was what the charges were about. So basically, here's what we have. A lot of people were saying that Mr. Floyd had been murdered. And initially I said, no, it's a manslaughter case. That still makes sense to me. It's just that Minneapolis or Minnesota has this statute that's just for murder in the third degree. And I'm going to put that on the screen. So it says that murder in the third degree is when whoever, without intent to effect the death of any person, causes the death of another by perpetrating an act imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind, without regard for human life, is guilty of murder in the third degree and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 25 years. And then the B subsection of this is for controlled substances, if you kill somebody by giving them a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 drug. So basically, we're just going to focus on murder in the third degree, which is 609.195 of the Minnesota statutes. So whoever without intent, that means zero intent. So that means that the evidence that the charging authorities have, all they have is enough evidence to say that he did not intend to, but that he still did affect the death of Mr. Floyd by perpetrating an act imminently dangerous to others, which is the knee on the neck. So by doing that knee on the neck for 9 minutes, that is an act that's imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life. So they're saying that he had no regard for Mr. Floyd's life, which I agree with. He was doing something for anyone who knows that if you stop the blood flow in these arteries for 9 minutes, the person's going to die. Usually it takes only 3 or 4 seconds. In Honolulu, we have the VNR, the vascular neck restraint. We train very seriously and very hard on the VNR, and it's a specialized motion movement where you cut the blood flow to the brain. And it usually only takes 3 to 5 seconds for someone to go unconscious. And they usually say that the amount of time that it takes them to go unconscious is the amount of time it takes them to wake back up. So how we would train at Honolulu is we would do the VNR, and if it took 5 seconds for them to go to sleep, then we would have a 5-second window, probably, to get them in handcuffs before they woke up. And that was the idea. And the VNR is very effective, and we train really, really hard with it at Honolulu. So we know what it's like to cut the blood flow to the brain. It should only be done for a few seconds, and that's just to gain compliance. And in this case, he was being VNR'd, basically with the knee, and he did it for 9 minutes. And so that is an act that is imminently dangerous to somebody and evinces a depraved mind without regard for human life. And you could tell by the look in Officer Chauvin's eyes, he had no regard for Mr. Floyd. He was looking around, no doubt at the crowd. I'm sure he was worried about the people that were standing around, things like that. But he had no regard for Mr. Floyd's life. It says that you may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 25. So 25 is the max. And I'm sure there's a fine. It says here $40,000 in the subsection B. So just so you can have something to kind of compare these two, I'm going to go with murder in the first degree so that you can see what this is. In Minnesota, murder in the first degree is whoever does the following is guilty of murder in the first and should be sentenced to imprisonment for life. Causes the death of a human with premeditation and with intent to effect the death of a person, so that has to have intent with premeditation, or causes the death of a human being while committing and attempting to commit criminal sexual conduct in the first or second degree with force or violence, either upon or affecting the person or another. So if you kill someone trying to rape somebody, or if you cause the death of a human being with intent to effect the death of a person or another while committing or attempting to commit burglary, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, arson in the first or second, a drive-by shooting, tampering with a witness in the first, escape from custody, or any felony violation of Chapter 152 involving a lawful sale of a controlled substance. So basically, if you cause somebody's death while committing a felony with intent to effect the death of somebody, so even if you say broke into a house to go kill somebody, but someone else was there and they died in the process, then that's murder in the first degree. And then murder in the second degree is intentional murder, like drive-by shootings. So maybe you're intending on killing somebody, and that is imprisonment for not more than 40. So it's a 40-year max. It says causes the death of a human being with intent to effect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So let's say you go to kill somebody. Let's say Let's say you're fighting somebody and you pull out a gun and you want to kill somebody. If you shoot that person but miss and hit somebody else, that's still murder because you intended on murdering somebody. Which here it says, if you cause the death of a human with intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So you didn't premeditate it. You didn't think, I'm going to go over there and kill somebody. Or drive-by shooting. Because they're going to say, in defense, the drive-by shooter is going to say, well, I didn't mean to kill anybody. I was just driving by to scare them or whatever. And that kind of takes that defense away. You went by there to do a drive-by shooting and you killed somebody. So that's murder in the second degree, and it's up to 40 years. After murder in the first degree is that murder in the third degree, which is what we read. And this is what the officer was charged with, because he did not have intent, according to the evidence that's been gathered, to file the complaint. He does not have intent to affect the death of any person, but he did cause the death of a person by perpetuating that act, imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life. The max is 25 years. After murder in the third degree, we do have manslaughter. And this is what I assumed it would be, because in Honolulu, it would have went to a manslaughter charge. It says that whoever does any of the following is guilty of manslaughter in the first degree may be sentenced to imprisonment of not more than 15 years or a payment, or to payment of a fine of not more than $30,000 or both. So you either are going to do a 15-year max sentence, you're going to have to pay 30 grand, or you're going to have to do a 15 max sentence and pay 30 grand. It says that you intentionally cause the death of another person in the heat of passion provoked by such words or act of another as would provoke an ordinary person of ordinary self-control under like circumstances, provided that the crying of a child does not constitute provocation. It's crazy that they put that in there, saying that you're not provoked to kill a child because they're crying. That's pretty nuts that they had to put that in there. But in any case, it says intentionally cause the death of another person in the heat of the passion, provoked by such words or acts of another as would provoke an ordinary person with ordinary self-control under like circumstances. I'm assuming that means something like you caught your wife cheating on you, or you found out that your husband or your wife had raped your child, which I'd seen before. And then you killed that person right away. So the case where like a father finds out that his daughter was raped or whatever, and shows up right after that, and the guy's there. No one's in danger anymore, but he had just raped his daughter, and he murders him. That's where manslaughter in the first degree would come in if he could prove that a person of ordinary self-control, your typical person basically, would do the same thing, which is pretty crazy to think about. That's pretty nuts. But that happens, and cops see that stuff all the time. Or here it says, if you cause the death of another or while committing or attempting to commit a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor offense with such force and violence that death or great bodily harm to any person was reasonably foreseeable, and murder in the first or second degree was not committed thereby. So if you didn't do murder in the first or second degrees, then but you did cause the death of somebody while committing or attempting to commit a misdemeanor, knowing that what you were doing may create bodily harm or great bodily harm to any person. So typically great bodily harm will be defined already in some subsection of what great bodily harm means. Probably like being maimed for life, blindness, losing a limb, things like that. If you know that you're like swinging an axe at somebody's arm, knowing that you're probably going to chop it off, but then you accidentally kill them. You didn't mean to kill them, you just tried to chop off their arm, but then you accidentally killed them. They could literally cite that and try to get you on manslaughter in the first. So what we just did is we described the crimes that are before murder third, so you could see why that wasn't murder third, or at least why the charges haven't been filed saying it was murder third. And then I showed you what is the crime that's after murder third, which is manslaughter in the first. It does say that he was charged with manslaughter. I'm a little confused. I don't know how they do it in Minnesota, but as far as double jeopardy is concerned, you cannot use an element of a crime twice for two different crimes. So I'm not sure how they do it in Minnesota, but it seems difficult that they're going to be able to charge him for murder and manslaughter considering he killed one person, right? So if they use the element of murder and he gets found not guilty, it doesn't seem like they should be able to get him on manslaughter because they already tried to try him for murder. But I do remember seeing cases in the past, especially federal cases, like with the Christopher Dede case in Hawaii, where he shot that man in the McDonald's in Waikiki, that he was tried for different crimes at the same time. And so if you, maybe in Minnesota, if they try you for murder, but the elements aren't there, that they can still get you for manslaughter and like slide that into the crime below it, which is why it says right here, and murder in the first or second degree was not committed thereby. So I don't know how that works, how they're going to be able to get him on manslaughter. What I anticipate is that they're going to drop the murder third charge and get him on manslaughter. As of right now, what I know about the case, like what I've seen, what I've read, seems to me like they did the murder charge to kind of, calm the streets, so to speak. But that they're probably going to get him on manslaughter. But I don't know. It seems pretty solid to me, that murder third charge, because he did put his knee on his neck for 9 minutes, and he seemed like he had a depraved mind, and that he had zero regard for that man's life. So, from what I've seen and what I've read, I think murder third is the appropriate charge, and we'll see how that goes. So I hope that this cleared some things up for you guys, just so you can understand from like a law enforcement perspective why he was charged with murder third and why he was charged with manslaughter, why he wasn't charged for murder first or whatever, and why I wasn't quick to jump to the murder charge when I did my last video. Now you know. Intent is super important, and intending on hurting him but not intending on murdering him are two different things. So that's where we're at right now. As more stuff comes out, I will address it and try to explain it. Send me some comments if you have questions. I'll try to answer what I can. I think this is a good move. I think murder third makes sense. I didn't know that existed. It does exist. Seems to me like he's guilty of murder third. And we'll just kind of move on from there. The other officers, however, I don't know what they're going to be charged with. So we'll see. There may be some negligent stuff involved, failure to render aid type cases, but I don't see them getting murder cases or even manslaughter cases. They may be accessories to certain things, like they might try to get them on accessories, but I don't think that's very strong, at least not right now. I did hear about some other video from a different angle that shows 3 officers were kneeling on him, and I don't know for how long they did that, but that could affect some things. So we're going to have to wait to see the body cam video, hear the words that were said, see if there was anyone who was trying to get the officer off of him. I mean, it's very possible that some people said some things to him. We don't know yet, so we'll see. But I appreciate the time. Hopefully this answers some questions. If you have more questions, leave them in the comment section, and I'll try to get to them. Thank you, guys. Aloha.